Today in Flex in the City, we talk to Kirsty Watson, Chief Operating Operator and Aberdeen Advisor, as she draws inspiration from some of the world's greatest leaders, emphasizing the importance of humility, bravery, and human connection in leadership. All that happening right now in Flex and the City.
Hello, everybody. This is Dave Micallef from the Henker Institute, and I'm standing in from my wonderful partner, Rachel Treese, who can't be here today, to record another episode of Flex in the City. I'm joined today by the wonderful Kirsty Watson. Kirsty is the Chief Operating Officer for Aberdeen Advisors. Welcome.
Thank you, Dave. It's great to be here.
Thanks for taking the time. Before we got into scripting this particular podcast, you told me a little bit about your journey. I'm curious, perhaps you could share with the listeners how you ended up in financial services, because I don't think it was, from what I understood, it was something you originally intended to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I ended up in financial services somewhat by accident, which I understand is quite a common story, having spoken to many people across the industry over the years. So I've been in financial services now for 18 years. I joined Micallef as was, now Aberdeen, from university. I studied economics up at the University of Aberdeen, and I fell into it somewhat by accident with the purpose and focus of saving to go travelling to Australia for a couple of years, having over there between my third and fourth year at university. However, the rest, they say, is history, and here I am 18 years later. I actually grew up in a town, now a city, Dunfermline, in the east coast of Scotland, and had what some people would call perhaps an early introduction to financial services. So I come from a long line of bookmakers. That was my family's business over many years. And I also worked in betting shops, both in Dunfermline and Aberdeen when I was at university. So, yeah, a little bit of a random introduction to the sector.
Yeah, very good. You've obviously got a long career behind you, and you've reached a very senior position. I'm just curious, have there been any inspiring leaders that maybe have helped you in that you've learned from or taken inspiration from?
Yeah, absolutely. I always think this question is difficult to give an answer that's just one person, to be honest. I've taken inspiration from leaders, both leaders that I've come into contact with personally, but equally, leaders that you see from afar, such as, your political leaders. But each of those leaders that I've taken inspiration from has a character trait or a quality that I've really admired. So, for example, classic, but I always look at Barack Obama in terms of his oratory skills. I think his ability to inspire people, the way that he can tell stories is something special. Likewise, you look at leaders such as Nelson Mandela, for example. Again, the bravery, the resilience, the commitment that comes through there. But likewise, I look at leaders that I've met in my personal life. So, my dad was an entrepreneur. He set up his own business. The ambition, the vision, the work ethic that I saw from him when I was young, growing up, that was really important to me. And then, there's other kind of leaders in business, people like, Sheryl Sandberg, for example, probably one of the most famous COOs out there. But again, somebody that demonstrates real humility and human connection in terms of the way that they interact with people. So yeah, it's difficult to give you one person, but I think it's for me, leadership is a combination of qualities and character traits. So actually I take inspiration from all different people, some famous, some not, just depends really.
And if you could bottle the definition of a great leader, what would that actually be? If you could synthesize some of the things you've learned from those individuals into one great leader, what do you think the most important traits would be?
I think for me, a really important trait in leadership is humility. I think that humility to realise that you can't be an expert in everything, that you need to take different opinions, different views. You need to build teams who can deliver what is required of the business. I think is really important. Bravery is really important in leadership, especially when tough times is, we talk about wartime generals, peacetime generals. I think good leaders have the ability to flex and adapt their style, but bravery is key to that. I think connection, so placing value on human connection, whether that's with your teams, your people, your clients, your customers. Getting that balance of kind of EQ and IQ is really, really critical. And I know that our CEO globally, Stephen, recently shared his sort of take on leadership with us at one of our leadership sessions, and he talks about, your head, your heart, and your guts. And I think that's probably a really succinct way to explain what I've just outlined. So yeah, for me, it's that healthy combination and healthy tension between using your head, your heart, and your guts, and leading in that manner is what really makes a good leader, regardless of what industry you work in.
Yeah, so very holistic style rather than just being very much in the head. I like what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you were to describe your own leadership style, Kirsty, what would that be like?
Yeah, it's always a tricky question. I wish my team were here to answer that one for you, to be honest. But first and foremost, I would say I'm pretty true to myself. So you don't really get a different Kirsty at home than you do at work. I am who I am. I'm proud of who I am, where I've come from, and I think I've stayed true to that over the years. So that's been key. I think you get yourself into a bit of hot water if you try to adapt a facade. That can be very difficult to maintain, and I think people see through that, and I don't think they are willing to follow somebody who they don't see as being true or authentic to themselves. Points I just mentioned about displaying empathy, humility. I actually feel very comfortable in expressing vulnerability. I don't have an issue at all with admitting that I am by far from the best at everything. I need help. I need a good team around me. So I'd like to think people would describe me as somebody who can build effective and strong teams. I like to surround myself with people who are better than me in their chosen areas of expertise, and people who are not yes people who will challenge, who will give you sometimes the right path. It's maybe not the path you want to hear or you want to take, but I like people to challenge me and kind of embrace that difference. I've always been very business first. So whilst it's very much about obviously the colleagues and how the business ultimately, we've got responsibilities. I've got responsibilities to clients, to customers, to the broader business, and I think making your decisions in that way is really, really important. And then likewise, I think probably last but not least, just that getting that balance right between managing with that EQ style, but equally managing by fact. So I don't like drama. I don't like excessive use of emotion in decision making. I think there's a time and a place for that, but I think managing by fact, leading by fact is really, really important. So yeah, that's how I would kind of describe the way that I like to lead. But most importantly, I like my teams to have fun. And I think having people who are enjoying what they do, they're engaged in what they do, and they're having fun in what they're doing is really, really important. And my current boss, says this regularly. Business is serious, but we don't have to be all the time. And I do think that's something we forget sometimes, and it's something that's really important.
I'm glad you said that, because obviously I come from financial service myself, and the word fun wasn't really part of the vocabulary, to be fair. So I'm impressed that you actually value that and encourage it. I think that's great. You mentioned earlier on that you've kind of found your purpose, and that's why you're still there doing what you do in financial services. Can we talk a bit more about your purpose? What motivates you? What core values have you tapped into that allow you to explore your purpose in financial services?
Yeah, I think a lot of who I am has kind of been shaped by, where I grew up, very close family, close group of friends, friendship groups that have evolved over the years as I've, went on to university, traveling, etc. I've met different people and formed different relationships, but they've all had huge influence on me. And I think ultimately a key thing that drives me, it's something my dad always used to say to me when I was little, was that money doesn't buy you happiness, but it does buy you choices. And I think this concept of choice and how the role of financial, the importance that the role of financial services has to play in making sure that everyone across the country, whether they've got kind of £5 or £5 million, the amount of money is really irrelevant. It's more about how do you make sure people can make the best choices possible, whether that be for them as individuals or for their families in terms of what they want to achieve with their life. And I think that is a really key driver for me, both in terms of my thinking when it comes to our customers and our clients, but also for our colleagues and the people that I'm responsible for within the organisation. I think that this concept of choice is really important. And I suppose the specific part of the Aberdeen business that I work in is very much focused on financial advisors, and I do believe that advice is absolutely critical when it comes to helping people make those right decisions. And the more people that we can get access to the right advice, then the healthier and fairer I think the society will be. So yeah, that's probably the key thing that drives me. But yeah, certainly my upbringing, my friendships, my family played a massive role in kind of shaping who I am. And interestingly, I don't, they do. And most of my close friends and family, if not nearly all of them, my partner included, don't work in financial services. They work in all different sorts of industries. Some of my best friends are teachers, hairdressers, they work in factories, they work for the government, they work in the travel industry. So I like to think that through that network of people, I've got a really good diverse bunch that keep our feet on the ground, because I think sometimes financial services can forget about ultimately the people that we're responsible for looking after. So I think that's really important.
I like to hear that. For me, as you were talking, I'm thinking of the words diversity of perspectives. So really using and harnessing other people's perspectives in what you do in decision making. Absolutely. Well, earlier on, when you described your own leadership style or traits, and it's a great list and something that resonates with me, you made it sound simple. There must have been some challenges along the way, though, Kirsty. Maybe you could describe some of those and how you overcame them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I struggled a little bit earlier in my career, and still do now. Perhaps not as much because I've developed sort of coping mechanisms over time, but you have these kind of self-limiting beliefs of, I'm not clever enough, I'm not intellectual enough, I'm not a specialist in a particular area. Because I think when I first started in financial services back in 2007, particularly the way we were as a company at that time, I would say that your kind of technical abilities were sometimes valued over your more general kind of leadership skills. For me, it was about getting comfortable that I was never going to be a technical SME, but what I was really good at was being a generalist, being able to take difficult, challenging problems, work through those problems, deliver against it for the business, for clients and customers, and also utilising my kind of people skills, my relationship skills in order to be able to not only influence people, but back to what I said earlier, building strong teams that are resilient to the change that we're currently seeing playing out across the industry. So yeah, but I think early on I struggled with kind of accepting what my strengths were and being able to talk about those quite comfortably. I think there's something, and I'm not going to say it's concentrated to females. I know some people have that view, but I think a lot of people suffer from this. They find it very difficult to talk about their own strengths, and that can actually be quite limiting for people, especially when they're looking for new opportunities in organisations. I think as well I was a bit of a people pleaser. Struggled to at times face into some of those more difficult conversations, especially peer to peer. That was something I had to work on and really hone my skills in that space. So yeah, they were probably some of the challenges that I encountered earlier on. And as I say, I'm not claiming to be cured by any means. I think it'll be our your kind of life's work. And interestingly, I think sometimes your biggest strengths can manifest themselves as challenges. So I remember doing the Strengths Finder assessment a good few years ago now, and empathy came out as my number one, which is great in some areas, but can also manifest itself in those kind of people pleasing type behaviours that I talked about. So yeah, I think it's just being aware of those and how to manage against it, and having good people around you and good support, from your team and from your managers to give you that feedback and keep you honest, really.
I think you've got a really great self-awareness of who you are, and what your saboteurs may be, and also those strengths that you can leverage. We call that maximizers in some schools. If you were to name two of the most important traits that you think A, helped you get through some of those challenges, and B, helped you be as successful as you are, what would those two traits be, do you think?
I think a bit of a cliche one, but can't ever underestimate, the value of hard work. And by hard work, I don't necessarily mean working, 60, 70, 8 hours a week, albeit sometimes, that's necessary. There's certain times when that's what you have to do. But yeah, I don't think you can cheat or avoid hard work, especially as you're building your career, being willing to just roll your sleeves up, get mucked in, take on those really difficult challenges. Sometimes when there's not a queue of people behind you willing to take them on, they're sometimes the best ones to take. That can be intimidating. But yeah, that kind of hard work piece is just can't be underestimated. You talk to most senior people in organisations, they've not got where they are through luck, albeit that plays a part in everybody's journey. But I think you can't replace hard work. And I think just taking the opportunities when they present themselves, even if at first they don't necessarily appear as opportunities, is really important. Because when I think about, I moved overseas when I was 27, 28 to live in the Middle East for a couple of years. And I remember sitting on the tarmac about to take off, probably absolutely terrified because I was moving out on my own. I had colleagues over there who I was going to be working with, and a boss at that time who I'd worked with for a long time, and it's always been a massive support to me. So the conditions for success were very much there, but fundamentally I was 27 years old moving out by myself to kind of help set up a new business. Yeah, I was frightened, but it's probably one of the best career decisions that I've ever made. And interestingly, that business didn't work out, and I'd much rather look back and say, there's that great business that we built and all these clients and customers that we're supporting. That's not been the case, but I'm still hugely proud of what we achieved as a team and how that helped me develop personally and in my career. So yeah, I think it's just hard work and take the chances when they're given to you.
Yeah, and with a sprinkle of bravery, which is what you mentioned in some of those leaders. So brave decision making. I think you've certainly embraced it yourself. We know that financial services can struggle, though. You mentioned you were 27, you were taking some chances, you weren't sure, you had some fears. Let's throw you back to when you were 21 and you just started. What would you say to yourself now if you met the 21-year-old Kirsty and you were giving yourself some advice when you were 21 years old about starting a career in financial services? What would be the best advice you could give yourself?
There's probably two or three things I would, if I was writing a letter to myself now, I would say, I think the first one, which maybe ties back to the point I made about the people pleasing challenges, is ultimately you can't control what others think about you. You can influence it, you can impact it, but you can't get in other people's head and control what they think. You can only control what you think about yourself. Right. So I think, backing yourself is really important, and worry more about what you think of yourself and your performance, and are you really delivering the best you can deliver, rather than worrying so much about what others may think is key. It's not about being liked. It's not about, we all want to build respect and trust, but you don't have to be everybody's best friend. I think is probably key. Embracing the difference. So back to that point of, naturally as human beings, we gravitate towards people who are like us. We tend to, it's proven studies, we recruit people in our like. We often try and build teams of people in our like, but actually you're kind of missing the point about embracing the difference. So that point I made earlier about, building people, teams of people that are different and better than you in a number of areas, I think is key. And just that, without repeating, but that point I made earlier about just take the chances, take the opportunities, don't, even if at first they seem like the opposite, just grab them, because sometimes for me, those opportunities that have been perhaps the scariest at the outset have proven to be the ones that have been most beneficial. But I don't think when I was 21, I never dreamed that I would get to move overseas with the company. I never dreamed I would get to ever be COO of the business. That seemed like a very far away concept. But here I am, and it's through a combination of the things that I've spoken about, but also fundamentally I've had some fantastic support and backing from some individuals who've had a huge impact on my career, and I've been very, very lucky to receive that support. So yeah, that's probably the advice I would give
Yeah, so
myself, as well as that obvious.
lots of open-minded behaviour. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, definitely. Just
yeah,
keep an open
not
mind.
being
It's all about
closed.
mindset. Yeah.
And probably coming from, I'm presuming that your entrepreneurial father probably taught you a bit of that as well, because you've got to be agile and open-minded when you're an entrepreneur. Sometimes you land where you weren't even planning to go in the first place. Very interesting.
Definitely.
Earlier on, you talked about a little bit. You started to talk about the culture of Aberdeen slightly. You mentioned, for example, that your CEO talks about leading with head, heart, and gut. I'm curious now, just a little bit more. Financial services is struggling in some areas. It's struggling to attract talent, for example. Right now, there's obviously going to be some financial headwinds given the geopolitical situation. Describe to me what's actually happening in your organization around culture. What are the important things that you're picking up on?
Yeah, I mean, we're a global business, so we've got between 4,000 and 5,000 colleagues globally, spread across 3 different business lines, with a number of central supporting teams that provide services out to those individual businesses. So, we've got a plethora of different microcultures that exist, both demographically but also geographically, because of the nature of the business that we're in. But what we're trying to do at Aberdeen is recognise what are the key traits that bind those businesses together, and we talk about those through the concept of our culture commitments, which again are more about, I would say, behaviours and how we want to behave, what we think the mindset of an Aberdeen person looks like, and it's very much about being transparent, being open with each other, about the challenges, the opportunities that exist, and most importantly, what we're going to do about it. Ambition is really key. So, we've got a big ambition as a PLC, which is to enable our clients and customers to be better investors. Now that's more important than ever, and we need to move at pace. So again, that ambitious piece is key. I think empowerment's an interesting word. I think it's overused in our sector, and it means very different things to different people. But for me, it's that bit about, seek forgiveness rather than ask permission. Mm. And, we do work within certain constraints. We are in financial services. We operate in very, heavily regulated environments. But it's that piece about, we want to empower our people to make decisions, to make the company better, to make the company faster. So that's key wherever you are in the world. And then last but not least, probably should have started with this one, it's this piece about put the client and the customer at the heart of what we're doing at all times, walk in their shoes. That's really, really important. And again, is relevant whatever part of Aberdeen that you work in. And that's how we try to bind the teams across the world together behind that common purpose of enabling better investors.
Yeah, very good. In the wider context of financial services overall, as I mentioned, and I think we all know that there are some headwinds. It's got its challenges and has had for a number of years. If you had a magic wand, what would you do to make financial services better, more able to reach the population that you talked about, the investors of all different generations?
Again, it's unlikely for me to be a single thing, but the key things I would pull out would be, first and foremost, always remembering whose money it is. I think sometimes we forget in different financial services organisation that the money we're managing belongs to a customer, it belongs to a person at the end of it, and that person has aspirations and things they want to achieve with that money over their lifetime. Clearly, we should treat that money like it's our own in terms of our respect for how we manage it and how we look after it, how we safeguard it. But I think remembering the person whose money it is really important, especially when it comes to the way that we design products and services, how we communicate with people. We get kind of caught up in our own hype, if I'm being honest, at times, and expected jargon and demonstrating how clever we are, but ultimately it's about looking after the person whose money it is at the end of the day. I think user and outcome when we're designing processes and ways of doing things. And we've got a lot we could learn from other industries when it comes to things like systems thinking, process engineering. Again, sometimes I think in FS we hide behind regulation as an excuse for, poor processes and poor client experience. I don't think that's right. I think we should lean into regulation and embrace the spirit of what it's trying to achieve, but it doesn't mean we can use it as an excuse. And then last but not least, I think speak highly of what we do, speak well of what we do. I think, people in financial services, it's the classic of you go to dinner party and somebody asks you what you do, or you go out with friends and you say, I work in financial services, you almost kind of hang your head. But actually, what we do is really important. And I think we should talk about that a lot more, and we should talk about it positively. And that's, something that I don't think the industry does as well as it could. And it's a bit of a self-perpetuating cycle for me. But yeah, overall, those are the things that I would change. And clearly there's huge change underway in the industry with new technologies coming on board, things like AI, robotics. You've got the democratization of wealth, where people are being given more choice than ever before about how they spend and invest their money. But ultimately, it comes back to those three things that I said up front. I don't think they change or they shift. That's what's key for me.
Sounds like a lot of mindfulness is needed in financial services. Who they are, what they're trying to achieve, who they're touching, and how they're touching them, and being proud again of being in financial services. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Lastly, just coming completely away from financial service for a second, I'd like to know what you do outside of work. What motivates you?
Yeah, so I would say I'm a bit of a social butterfly outside of work. So I really enjoy spending time with, partner, friends, family. I've got a big circle of friends, close family. We spend a lot of time together, and I get a lot of pleasure and enjoyment from that. I love to travel, like to go and see new places. I think we touched on that earlier when we were chatting. But again, just that experience of different cultures, different ways of thinking, different foods. Like, I just love that. That's what I like to do when I'm not working. And I also, going back probably 2 or 3 years in the middle of the pandemic, sort of rediscovered a love for exercise. Ironically, exercise at 6 a.m, which I think if you'd spoken to my colleagues or my friends or family, they probably would have laughed at you. But for me, that came from a place of, I was feeling pretty isolated during the pandemic. My fitness and, body confidence, etc., had been quite negatively impacted. And I discovered a sort of method of training in my local area that just really worked for me. And through that, I've, found a whole new community of friends and like-minded people who, come together and motivate each other and push each other on. And that's been quite a game changer for me, actually, not only in terms of mental sort of health, but also physical health and sharpness for dealing with some of the challenges that I've had to deal with at work over the last few years. So yeah, that's become really important to me. But as I said, I think if you'd asked my social network before about Kirsty getting up at 5:30 to go to the gym, they probably would have laughed you out the room. But it's been great for me.
Great. So lots of connection is coming through very strong, connecting with people, important, obviously. Well, great. Thank you very much, Kirsty. I really appreciate the authentic interview, and I hope the viewers do as well, the listeners, should I say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a lovely
Thanks
day.
for having me.
You're very welcome.
You just listened to Flex in the City. Catch us on our next episode.